All right, Mr. Lennon, you keep telling me that I can make 30 to 50% return on my money with a fractionalized note. Just make the math math. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Growing the Money Breakfast of Champions edition. My name is Rich Lennon from 8 to 8:10. Every weekday morning, we talk about growing the money. And today I'm going to do the math on the fractionalized note. I feel like that is the most common question I get when I'm out meeting people or I am online and I make a post and people don't quite understand the math that I do. So today I'm just going to spend some time mathing the math. I hope everybody's having a great day. Today's only Tuesday. I feel like I'm halfway through the week at least, maybe towards the back end, but that's just not true. And I probably said it a bunch of times, but I encourage you to get outside of your market. Get outside your market and get to know people. That's what I'm doing down here in Orlando. I mean, the lighting's not perfect for my Facebook lives, but other than that, it's been really fantastic and amazing. Just getting to know people who have a skill set that I don't have, and to go around and be around people who are doing the things that I want to be doing. And you got to go find those people. They're often not in your market. Oftentimes you have to travel for something like that to really get people that are open and transparent and willing to share with you. And I just encourage you to go do that. And so that's what I'm doing right now. And that means I have to drink my Starbucks coffee that is really not very good. Just kidding. I love you, Starbucks. No, I don't. All right, let's dive back in. I'm going to go over the math of the fractionalized note, and you can come up with any percentage that you want to earn on your fractionalized note, depending on how you fractionalize it. It's fractionalizing is very similar to like the U.S. dollar, where we have nickel, dimes, and quarters, and so the $1 bill is just a note. They used to call it a treasury note, and you can fractionalize that with nickels, dimes, and pennies, and that's what we do. And we do a little bit of arbitrage to use other people's interests. So let me just do the math. I'm gonna keep it math super, super simple. This is not exactly how we structure our loans. I like to structure it for 6 months, but in today's example, I'm gonna use, hey, 1 whole year of lending. That's way easier to do the math while I'm out here live and I don't have to take any notes. I can just do it in my head. So we're gonna do a 20% note. Typically, I've talked about this a bunch of times. If you are a professional lender, you're lending around 20%. And you might call it 20%. You might call it 13 and 3 for 6 months. You might call it 12 and 4 for 6 months. You can call it a bunch of different things. But in general, a professional money lender is lending in the neighborhood of 20%. All right. So if I am lending $200,000 and my borrower is borrowing that money at 20%, at the end of 365 days, said borrower owes the lender $40,000. 20% of $200,000 is $40,000. So when they go to sell the property or refinance the property or do whatever it is that they may be doing, when they get cashed out, they have to pay back $200,000, your principal, plus the $40,000, $240,000. Then they're done with the deal. They take their profits and boom, they go on to the next deal and you go off to the next loan. So $40,000 in interest payments is the number that we're talking about. When we fractionalize the note, we're only putting in a portion of the $200,000 that's being lent. Personally, I like to put in approximately 50%. And so I'm going to kind of break down that example. I'm going to put in 50%, but then I go to somebody that I call lazy money. Lazy money is someone who I want to be one day. By the way, that's my retirement plan. I plan to have a lot of money, give it to 5 or 10 people, be lazy money in a very secure position where my primary concern is the return of the capital versus my return on the capital. Today, I'm working hard, I'm busy, probably like you if you're out here watching, and we want to go earn that 30 to 50%. But there'll be a period in our life, there'll be a season in our life where we won't want to go work all the time. And that's called retirement, or whatever that is and that vision is for you. You will likely be there one day. I certainly hope to be. And so those people are happy to receive something like a 10% return as long as their investment is secure. The number one thing they're worried about is security. So I'll go over security on another Facebook Live. I won't go into it here. What makes the fractionalized note so secure for the lazy money? I'm just talking about the return and the math on the math. $40,000 in interest payments collected. I'm going to put in $100,000 of my money, and then I'm going to get lazy money to put in $100,000 as well. So I take my $100,000, I wire it to the attorney. Lazy money takes their $100,000, wires it to the attorney. We lend it out for 6 to 8 months, whatever the time period may be, and then the money comes back to us. I shouldn't have said 6 to 8 months because in this example, I'm using it for 1 year. So we wire it into the attorney. Me and lazy money wire into the attorney. 1 year goes by, we get our money back. The interest paid is it's $40,000. Now, the lazy money gave me $100,000 with the agreement that they would get a 10% return. So the return on their investment is their $100,000 principal, which they, of course, get back, plus they earn 10% on said investment. So they get $110,000 back, right? $10,000 is 10% of $100,000. My interest received on the transaction was $40,000. I have to give $10,000 of that to lazy money. I have to is probably not the right word. I'm excited to give lazy money their 10%. They're a great partner. So I'm going to give the lazy money back their $110,000. That leaves $30,000 of interest remaining. I invested $100,000 into this transaction. I get the remaining interest on the deal. So I've earned $30,000 on my $100,000 investment. I get back my $100,000 plus I get the $30,000. Thus, I get a rate of return of 30%. But it doesn't have to be 30%. Depending on what your season of life is, will depend how high of a return you want to get. And let me just use another example. Here's an example of how we can get a 50% return on our money. Same scenario. The borrower, it looks nothing different to the borrower. It's the exact same transaction for the borrower. They're borrowing $200,000. They're paying 20% interest on it. So their total payments are $40,000. But this time, instead of putting $100,000 in, I'm going to work a little harder, and I'm only going to put $50,000 into this deal. So, same scenario. I go to my lazy money partner that is concerned about conservation in capital instead of return on capital, and I'm going to give them a 10% return. So we lend it out, a year goes by, the borrower sells the property, and we have $40,000 of interest collected. Now, the lazy money this time, they put in $150,000. They still get a 10% return. So they're going to get $150,000, their principal, plus 10%, which is $15,000. Now, the same scenario as the first time, the borrower pays $40,000 in interest. So if they paid $40,000 in interest, and I give $15,000 of those interest payments to the lazy money to make them whole at $165,000, that means I get my principal back, which is $50,000 plus the remaining interest. And the remaining interest in this situation is $25,000. So I received $25,000 of interest payments on my $50,000 loan. I receive a 50% return on my investment. I can fractionalize that note. It doesn't have to be 30% return. It doesn't have to be a 50% return. I don't have to have half of the money in the deal or 25% of the money in the deal. I can have any fractionalization of the deal that I want to be in. My personal opinion is that you should be at least 25% into the deal. You need to make sure that lazy money is protected. After all, they are worried about the conservation of capital. So you need to put your capital in a first loss position. You found the deal, you sourced it, you watched the deal, you put the paperwork together, you did all those things. So you get the highest rate of return, but you also need to take the highest risk. So you're going to put yourself in the first position there. So I would put $50,000 in this scenario where I'm earning 50% return on my money, and that would likely, hopefully, protect my lazy money if something should arise and there's a problem in the deal. And like I was saying, you could put in any percentage of that, and it rarely works out where it's a perfect 100,000 here and 100,000 there. Because what happens is the lazy money is like, oh, I have $92,000 in my account. Can I just use that? Yeah, I'll come up and I'll make the difference for our $200,000 loan. Now I'll put $108,000 in. Or they might say, oh, I've got $120,000 in my account. Can I lend all that money out? Then I'll say, sure, they can put in $120,000 and I'll put in the $80,000. Remember, I'm serving the client here, which is the lazy money, and they don't want any money sitting around in their bank accounts, because any money sitting around in their bank accounts is money that's not moving and they're not getting a very nice rate of return on it. Maybe they're getting 1%. If they're lucky, maybe they're in a money market getting 3 or 4. So they will often dictate how much money they want to put in, and then I'll put in the subsequent. Now, I just have the personal rule that I like to put in around half, and that's just my rule because I don't want to work as hard. The fewer dollars that I put into each one of the deals, the more deals I have to do. And I've just come to the point in my life where I don't want to do all those deals. All right, I'm at 10 minutes. Thank you, everybody, for watching. If you want like a detailed breakdown, step by step on exactly how this works, go to richlennon.com and download the Smarter Wealth Blueprint. It's free, doesn't cost anything, and it breaks down exactly what I'm doing, and you can educate yourself on it. So I hope everybody has a great day, and I will see everybody soon.